Hello, Miss Dominique.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you on this lovely Friday. I'm so excited. The weekend
Yes.
is right around the corner. I'll be working, but it is still the weekend, so I will enjoy myself. How about you?
I'm good. Yes, I'm glad it's Friday. I'll be working as well, of course. The weekends are always super busy for, real estate agents. But speaking of work, I wanted to talk to you about some clients that I have who they want to make an offer on a house, but
Okay.
they are afraid of the monthly mortgage payment, given the high interest rates right now. So I wanted to kind of, run some numbers by you first before we make an official offer.
Mhm.
But beforehand, for the people who are watching, if you can kind of give a little explanation of why interest rates are so important and how they affect your monthly mortgage payment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think right now the biggest thing to know if you are in the market and you're looking at what's going on, you're looking at the interest rates. We got so used to the interest rates that we've seen in the past couple of years, but truly, those were not normal rates, right? Like we
Yeah.
had extenuating circumstances that led to such a low rate environment that where we are right now is actually fairly standard. If you look at the historical chart of where interest rates have been in the past in this country, our parents bought when the rates were like in the teens,
Mhm.
17, 18, 19%. Um, and now we're looking at 8% and we're like, oh my God, that's crazy. Now, rightfully so, because the
Mhm.
purchase price is so much higher than it
Yeah.
was back in the day. So, there is some concern there. However, I think that we need to get rid of this idea of a normal interest rate is 3.25. It just isn't. Now, do I
Yeah.
think rates will come back down at some point? I do. All of the experts that I follow, they also agree that they'll probably likely come down. However, none of us think it's going to come down to that. You know, um, if I had to guess, I'm thinking we're probably going to settle somewhere in the sixes, high five, low sixes. Um, and I really hope that we get there sooner rather than later. But I think
Yeah.
that one thing that I've been really having the conversation with my clients about is just getting used to this rate environment because I don't see it changing significantly.
Mhm.
Again, not to where it was just 2 and 3 years ago.
Right.
So
I
I
don't
think we
think
need
it's
to
gonna go
remove that
that
idea.
down. Yeah, like I don't think it's gonna go down that much for a while. When COVID hit, rates were what, 3,
Yeah.
3.5, around that area, and now they're reaching 8%. Just the way that the market is going right now, I don't know if we will get to that point again for a while, maybe not ever, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you. And so, so
yeah,
again, I think that that's just something for people to just understand and maybe do some research themselves. And,
yeah,
again, go back and look at the historical rate chart and see what it looked like in this country. And you'll realize like 7 and 8% is not too far from the norm, right?
yeah,
Now, that being said, your rate will absolutely affect your monthly payment, right? It's used to determine what that monthly payment is going to be. And I know the clients that you're talking about because
yes,
we've actually been working on their file together. So Mr. and Mrs. Lane, I'm very familiar with, and I know
yes.
for them particularly, their comfort level in a payment doesn't necessarily match what they qualify for. And I think
Mhm.
that's another thing for us to talk about is there's the amount that the lender says you can afford, but that doesn't always necessarily match your comfort level, right? And
Right,
these clients are the perfect example of that, right? Like we pre-approved them for um much higher than uh what they're looking at
mhm,
because their income and their debt level supports that. However, I know after speaking with them, their comfort level in a payment is no more than 3,500. That's your principal and interest payment.
right,
Because once we tack on taxes and insurance, that's going to probably put them like really where their max comfort level is. And so for them it's 3,500. So but there are things that we can do to give them that comfortable payment, and give them an interest rate that'll give them that payment. So there's options out there. And that's the biggest thing that I want to tell people is like, number one, understand, our history and rates, but also understand that there are options right now to help you with affordability.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess let's kind of get into it with Mr.
Yeah.
and Mrs. Lane. Um,
So tell me
so
about the property.
yes, so they're looking at a house right now that is currently priced at 624,000. It has been on the market for a while and it has had a couple of price decreases. So it was
Mm-hmm.
originally at 670 and then it had a price decrease to 650 and now it's at 624. It's been on the market for about 60 days, so I definitely think there's some wiggle room for negotiation. But I first want to see, what do the numbers look like with if they were to put an offer in at 624 at asking price, how much would they have to pay monthly on that mortgage?
Sure. Okay. And then, yep. So while I'm doing that, let me just ask you, so have you run comps on the property? Do you know
Yes.
what you think the value is and how much it's worth?
So when it was put on the market, I think it was priced properly. I think now that 650 mark would be a good price. But
Okay.
given that it has been sitting on the market for quite some time, the listing agent just wants it to move. I have
Okay.
talked to the listing agent and the sellers just want to sell pretty much. They're very motivated. They want to get the
Hmm.
home sold so they can, move out of state.
Okay.
So
Okay,
yeah.
so that's good to know. I mean, it's good to know that it's worth more than what they're asking, because again, therein lies where the options that we might have to use for this offer, because plugging in the numbers at the 624 purchase price, the principal and interest payment from day one is higher than their comfort level. So
Okay.
sadly, it's coming in around $3,659, and that's at, I'm quoting a rate of 7.99 today.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so right away, that gets them at a payment that's higher than their comfort level. So then let me ask you, since we know the house will
Mhm.
appraise probably higher than asked, so we've got some wiggle room, do you think that if we went in with a slightly higher offer and asked for a seller concession to buy
Mhm.
down their rate temporarily to get them in that comfort level, um, what do you think that's something that they would be willing to negotiate?
I definitely think negotiating a buy down is reasonable, and it can be done, but I guess the
Okay.
question would be how much would I need to ask for?
Sure. Sure. So let's look at that while I get that up. So the one thing I do want to say is that where our buyer's comfort level is right now on a payment is really motivated by the fact that they have one debt in particular that they're still paying on. It's a
Mhm.
slightly higher monthly payment, and once that payment goes away, they're going to have a higher capacity for a larger mortgage payment. But right now, while they're paying that debt off, which is their car, it's got a
Mhm.
a significant payment. Um, that's why they really want to keep their payment under that 3,500 threshold, at least until they pay that car off, which is why I think a temporary buy down is a good option. And it is
Okay.
something that I've discussed with Mr. and Mrs. Lane. And they're both in agreement with me. They do think at some point in the next few years, they'll likely refinance if rates come down. Although we're not banking on it, they do think
Yeah.
that's going to happen. So we looked at numbers on a temporary buy down for a kind of like example offer that they would make, and we looked at number on a permanent buy down, and they really, really like the idea of the temporary buy down, just because, again, they're in agreement with me that at some point in the next few years rates will come down. But also, if they do have to refinance, in the next couple of years, they don't want to lose that money that they got from the seller. And with the temporary buy down, you don't lose the money. It goes towards your payoff when you refinance. So you get to keep that money. So I want to try to get as much of a seller credit that we can to give Mr. and Mrs. Lane at least a 3-year buy down. That's the max we can do on a temporary buy down. And so we're going to be looking at these numbers here for the 3-2-1 buy down. And so what we need from the seller is $24,887. So this is what I would recommend. If we think we could get $25,000 from them, I would suggest that we go in, instead of at the asking price of $624, we increase it by $25,000. We go in at $649. We're assuming that it's going to appraise at that amount, which I've looked at the property. I do think it will as well. We use that $25,000 from the seller, and we buy their rate down for the first 3 years. So for the first year, so their normal monthly payment, principal and interest, is $3806 at 7.99%. So on year 4, it's going to go down to their normal payment. However, the first 12 months, they're going to feel like they have a rate of 4.99% because we're using the bulk of that seller concession to pay the rate down for the first few years. So they're starting at day 1 for the first 12 months, their principal and interest payment is $27.84. So much lower than their comfort level of $3,500. They've got over $1,000 in monthly savings in the first year. The second year, they still have a savings. However, it's not as much, but still a good amount. They're saving a little, very close to $700 a month. And again, keeping them within that comfort level for their principal and interest payment monthly. Now, the third year, and I'm hoping by this time, we're looking at a refinance. That's what I'm really hoping. But, no one has a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. So worst case scenario, rates don't change. They still get a discount in that third year, 1% for a monthly savings of $355. Again, keeping them in their comfort level of $3,500 a month. Now, here's the biggest thing to know. Their car payment in year 3 is going to be gone. They only have a couple more years on that car payment. So even if, again, worst case scenario, we're not able to refinance and rates are still where they're at, or even could be higher, we don't know. Their payment is over the $3,500 comfort level, but now their comfort level is higher, right? Because their car payment is gone. So they're fine with $3,800 in year 4. They're totally fine with that because, again, they don't have any plans. Hopefully their car lasts and they don't have any plans to get a new one. They're very adamant about, hey, once we pay this car off, like, we're keeping it until the wheels fall off, which I'm like, that's great. So 38 doesn't scare them in year 4. And I think the biggest thing is for them to have the relief of the first few years. And again, having a comfortable monthly payment that meets their comfort level.
Right. Okay.
So you tell me, do you think if we go in at that ask of $649, requesting $25,000, is that something that you could negotiate?
Yes. So I think this is a great idea. I definitely would be able to negotiate this amount. So while you were kind of going over your part, I did run some numbers on my end.
Okay.
So let me try to share my screen here. Let's see. Okay, can you see it?
I can.
Okay, so let's say if we were to go at, if we were to put in an offer at the current listing price, right, which is 624,000. So if we did that, the seller's estimated net proceeds, so how much they would get out of it, would be about 317,000. Now,
Hmm.
if we did what you were suggesting, um, come in higher at 649, which I think they would actually pretty like, it's more than what the offer is right now.
Hmm.
So if we went in at 649 and we did a 25,000 seller credit that can be used as a
Hmm.
buy down, then the seller will still net 314,848. So that's pretty close. It's 314 to 317. That's really close to what they would have if we just went in at the original or at the current price that it's at now. So I think
Yeah,
it's
and I don't
doable.
I don't think, I mean, that's what, a difference of maybe 2,200. If your house, I mean, their house has been sitting now for 60 days. I highly doubt that
Yeah.
they will balk on $2,000, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, they're very motivated anyway. So I think
Sure.
if we did this, it would definitely help both sides. It's not an unreasonable offer to ask,
Yep.
given the amount of time it's been on the market and then they're motivated and, it'll help my client as well. It'll
Sure.
definitely help the buyer side. So
Well, and
yeah.
I also, I mean, once you present the offer, the
Mhm.
other thing that we have in our back pocket is the fact that our clients have been underwritten pre-approved. So not only are we, meeting them at their ask, but we are also very much, let me stop your share there. Seeing myself is very weird. But yeah, I mean, not only are we meeting them kind of there, but we are also um we're coming in with a very strong offer and having guaranteed financing, right? So if these are
Yeah.
clients that are very motivated to get their house sold, um I am happy to, you know what I do, right? I call the listing side. I'm going to advocate for our buyer. I'm going to let the listing agent know that our buyers have been underwritten, pre-approved. We have guaranteed financing.
Mhm.
So it's a strong offer.
Yeah.
I think
I
between
think
what
so.
you discuss with them and what I discuss with them, I can't see them not accepting it, especially since they don't have any other offers on the table.
Mhm.
Now, I went ahead and took the time to put together a flyer that I can go ahead and send to Mr. and Mrs.
Ooh.
Lane that will show
Mhm.
them the numbers, right? So
Okay.
I'm gonna, once I get off the phone with you, I'm gonna
Mhm.
send this to them and we're going to go over the numbers. I'll get on a call. I'll explain everything. I'll address all of their questions, concerns. But I think they're really, really going to like this. And then once I have the go ahead, you'll connect with them and put together the offer.
Mhm.
You'll call the listing side, and then I'll call right after you to advocate for our buyers. But I think we got something really good here.
Yeah, I do. I definitely will talk with Mr. and Mrs. Lane about it, and of course see if we can put in that offer as soon as possible. But I definitely think that it's a good offer. You know,
Yeah,
I
I
think the
agree.
seller side will be willing to negotiate this, and it'll work out for everyone in the end. The
I
home will get
agree.
sold. They'll have a lower monthly payment with the 3-year buy down. So it works out perfectly.
It's a win-win for everyone across the board, right?
Mhm.
Like the
Absolutely.
listing agent gets to get the property sold that they've been working on for the last couple of months. The sellers, they get to move out and move on with their life, which at the end of the day, I think is like the biggest thing that the seller wants.
Yeah,
And then our buyers love the house and they get to go in at a
I
comfort,
know.
at a very, at their comfort level, which is great.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love this. I think it's a very strong offer, and I'm really, really, really excited for all parties.
Yeah, I am too. Well, thank you, Miss Dominique, for running the numbers with me, and going over, interest rate buy downs.
Of
I do
course, my
truly
pleasure.
appreciate your time and your knowledge as always.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. It's always lovely working with you. And I just really appreciate the fact that you suggested that we did this video because I do understand. I mean, I see it a lot, I hear it a lot. I have a lot of conversations with my buyers, and people are
Yeah.
just feeling really stuck right now. They're focusing
Yeah.
on the interest rate. And I would just caution people to just focus on that monthly payment. What is your comfort level? And if you're not comfortable, but you like that house, what are some options you can exercise like this? Maybe a temporary
Yeah.
buy down, maybe a permanent buy down. Maybe you need help with your closing costs. If you can get that, this is the time, right? Like, I don't think this is a seller or buyer's market. I think we're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's
But I
definitely somewhere in the
definitely,
middle.
yeah, but I definitely think that buyers have a lot higher of a chance of negotiating in this market than they did in the past couple of
Absolutely.
years. So
Absolutely.
great
As I
suggestion in the
kind of
video.
Oh, you're welcome. But as I kind of mentioned before, houses are sitting on the market right now and they aren't selling unless they have um, price decrease. So
Mm-hmm.
with that said, buyers are able to negotiate a lot more than they were before. Or, if it was just a seller's market, they wouldn't have as much room to negotiate, but now they
Yeah.
can. So I think they should definitely use it,
Yep.
while the time
Because
is now.
yeah, because sellers are, exactly to your point. I mean, sellers are chasing the market right now, and so I
Yeah.
think because we're kind of in that weird, awkward period, there's just a buyer has a lot more negotiating power. So
Yeah, of
kudos to you for making the video suggestion. It was
course.
lovely talking to you as always, and I'm very excited for Mr. and Mrs. Lane. By the way, we did use aliases, so we're protecting
Yes,
our
we
clients
did.
confidentiality, but yeah, I'm really excited for them. I think that they are going to be super thrilled with this, and yeah, we'll just touch base once we have discussed it with them.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, thank you for your time and you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.